777 Spider-Man. We're here to talk about the post E3 Sony coverage and discuss a little bit of our thoughts on the games and such.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a new format for my channel, but I figured, it's something I wanted to do for a little while. And who better than to have than my good old cousin here to bounce things off of? And we certainly have a lot to talk about. This E3 was kind of a mixed bag for me. A lot of people say that Sony took this E3. I didn't watch Microsoft's conference, I was working. I didn't watch Nintendo's conference because Nintendo doesn't really hold my interest as much as they used to. I mean, they kind of have a formula going into these
Yeah,
E3s.
I know what you mean.
So, Sony was the one I was looking for. Plus, it's the console that I own, and man, I just felt really mixed. Just there was a lot of games, and we were talking about this before we started this podcast. We were podcasting without podcasting.
Yeah, we just needed to hit that record button, just get this out of the way because, man, we have a lot to talk about here.
Yeah. It's weird. Shit.
You okay there?
I unplugged my headset.
Man.
I accidentally unplugged my headset. That was great.
Oh, boy. Good job on that.
Thanks. So yeah, it's geez, I don't even know where to start. Like the conference started off with God of War.
God of War. That's actually not a bad way to go because a lot of people are recognize, even people not playing PlayStation. They know what God of War is and they know it's a big game. So
Yeah, and it started off the conference with a bang. Like right out of the bat, the big guns are coming out, so it gets people excited. I personally have never really played a God of War game, so I wasn't too into it. But I am intrigued. You know, like I've always wanted to play 2 and 3. Never got around to it. Eventually,
they're good games. They're really good games. I played them to death. I love Greek mythology, and from what it was going on in the trailer, it seems to be we're hitting into Norse mythology now. I have no idea what we're going to go on beyond it. But the biggest thing that really struck at me was the fact that, spoiler alert, Kratos dies in God of War 3, and they never touch on it ever since then. Why he's still around? I mean,
it's assumed that he died, but
yeah, it's assumed that he died. But like, if you played a God of War 3, it's very clear that he died in an obvious way. Like that's how it's supposed to die. And then they go to like some sort of cliffhanger ending where you see his corpse 1 second, and then a flash of lightning, and it's gone. And then you go, oh, maybe Kratos dragged himself off the cliff and died that way in a sort of twist on how the first game was supposed to go.
yeah, totally ripping off the Infamous 2's ending.
Yeah, definitely. But Infamous 2 ended up not doing anything with that, so
Yeah, they kind of shit the bed there, but. Yeah, it was. I mean, if you pay attention to Kratos, you actually can see the scar from when he stabbed himself. If you look at his stomach, you can see the scar. Ooh, I'm spoiling the game.
that's why this is a big spoiler alert to people who haven't played the game. You should, by the way. It's a great game.
Yeah, it shows like the scar on his stomach from when he impaled himself. So I'm assuming this is all
Taking place afterwards.
yeah taking place afterwards, and we'll probably get an explanation. Probably not. Who knows?
I'm hoping we do. Like before the game comes out, I'm hoping we get an explanation on that.
I think we will, because the game is a lot more slower than it normally is. That's what I noticed. That's the big takeaway.
Yeah.
Like, you're still fighting big monsters, but it's a lot slower. It's a lot more character driven.
Yeah, that's the thing I noticed. If you played the God of War games, you'll notice that like they focus more on the story as we keep going in. Like God of War 1, we were mostly focused on the gameplay and all that. Then God of War 2, we got a good story, a good revenge story. And then God of War 3, they built up on that. They continued from that revenge story, but they add more character-driven focus. And then God of War 4 is going to be it's not even God of War 4. I don't even know.
It's just God of War.
Yeah, God of War PS4. Like,
Yeah, it's like N64 all over again. We're just gonna put PS4 at the end of every title.
yeah,
We're gonna get to that, by the way, later. That PS4 game, that they branded with.
yeah, the hashtag PS, insert game title / PS4.
Yeah, that game. We're gonna get into it. It's gonna be a good time when we get into it.
Yeah. So yeah, God of War PS4 looks pretty good, and I'm actually pretty interested. But I'm more interested in how they're gonna explain Kratos' big survival, because he got fucked up at the end of the third game, and they kind of tried to, keep the God of War, continuity with making it a prequel game for Ascension, but it seems like we're going forward now, and I don't know how.
Do you think we'll get multiplayer in this one?
Maybe. I mean, we played the multiplayer. It wasn't that
It
bad.
wasn't that bad. It was just really laggy.
Yeah,
It,
that was the biggest takeaway from it. I actually played a little bit of the.
yeah, you bought it, didn't you?
I bought it and I played the multiplayer in the full version. It was worse.
Okay. Okay.
It
Well,
was worse.
good to know I didn't. I actually considered buying that. I thought that was going to be my first God of War game that I actually purchased. Because the multiplayer, when we played it, we had fun. I
It
mean,
was fun. Yeah, it was good. It was a good beta. It was. I really liked it. I was like, oh wow, they're actually making this a fun way. It's not like, it's not. It's like a beat 'em up kind of multiplayer, but they do it in a really interesting way where you gotta use some sort of strategy to kill people. Because
yeah, and then you got to take out the Cyclops.
yeah, that was real good. Yeah, the monsters they would actually put in monsters that would be obstacles, and you would have to fight them and fight the other players at the same time. And then like taking out the monsters would give you a big bonus, which would give you a power up, and yeah, good game, good game. Destroyed by lag.
Yeah, well, that's the story of many a game.
Yeah.
Take notes, Uncharted 3.
Yeah, you need to fix your servers, guys.
No,
'Cause
they're not going to fix those servers.
No.
You kidding me? That game's obsolete. Obsolete.
at this point, it kind of seems that way. We've been Uncharted multiplayer fans for a while, and it's really difficult to force yourself through.
But yeah, I mean, like, I'm intrigued by God of War. This might be the first one I pick up if I don't end up picking up the remastered third game for the PS4. I think I was looking at it the other day, and I was like, maybe I should get this, but
I would suggest you do. It's a good start, especially God of War 1. It's great. It's really great, and I think you might actually get a kick out of the story. Greek mythology is just awesome.
right after that, I don't remember what they showed. I think it might have been Days Gone.
Yeah, they did. They started with Days Gone, and the first thing I thought of was Last of Us, but with bikers.
Yeah, I was trying really hard to not make that comparison, but as soon as I looked at it and as soon as I saw the zombies, I was like, oh boy, here we go. It's the 2015 fad coming back to life again.
Yeah.
Everything must be a post-apocalyptic zombie game.
It doesn't help that they're doing like wide pan shots of nature taking over the lands again, like in the same exact way that Last of Us did it. Like Last of Us was just eye candy, pure eye candy for like all this moss and plants just taking over like buildings and all that, and that's all you see in pretty much like 30% of the trailer for Days Gone.
Yep.
And I don't know, I feel like that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to take notes from that, but do it worse. Sad to say.
And it's from Ben's studio, and we were discussing this again before we went up. Like, those are the guys who worked on the Siphon Filter games. I think they worked on Omega Strain on the PS2. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But, like, people have been waiting for another Siphon Filter for years, man. Like, years. And it's insane how, like, that's an IP that hasn't been touched in over a decade, probably even more. And they kind of just shafted it, and they came up with this new thing, which isn't bad. New ideas are always great.
New consoles, new ideas, new IPs. That's really way to go, if you ask me. But
the problem with this game is that we've seen this before about 1,000,000 different times, and now having seen so many games replicate this same post-apocalyptic, the world is being ravaged by zombies, nature's taking back the environment. You have to kind of reinvent the wheel and not just be another
you got to be
on it.
Yeah, you got to be clever about it. Like, we all sort of groaned when Last of Us. I'm sorry to get back on Last of Us. I just kind of think they did it sort of right, And
well, they were the first ones to kind of really do that whole narrative thing. They made it, a more personal game. Whereas this game just seems like you're a mercenary in midst of a zombie apocalypse. So the concept is just kind of like dull. And from what we saw of the gameplay, it's also dull. A lot of people were kind of attacking on the game for just being like, oh, there's like 1,010,000 zombies, and this guy has like 7 million clips of ammo, just taking them all down pretty much easily. And I get it, it's a tech demo, so sometimes, infinite ammo is on, infinite health is on, or the AI can't touch you because you're in God mode. But it didn't set a good first impression. And it was one of those weird things, because it started off E3, sort of. It was kind of like the second thing they showed, and then it ended E3. And it did it in almost kind of a weird way, where it just felt like it was just shoehorned in. I felt like...
Yeah, like they really want to push it. They really want to push that game out, like, They want to make that the game that everyone looks at.
And it's not. It's the game that everyone's kind of like, eh.
Yeah, like everyone's sort of like scoffing at it. I can see it when they were doing actual wide shots of people's expressions. I noticed some people were looking unimpressed, and I was right there with them. Like this game has a lot to prove right now to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna count it out or anything, but it's just one of those games that like either it needs to do something drastically different and impress me, or it's just gonna go right under the radar, and it's gonna be one of those games that people are like, oh yeah, that game is gonna be Starhawk.
It's gonna be
This
no,
guy,
but Starhawk had a lot of appeal to it. If you ask me, it was a little. I don't want to put Starhawk in that territory just because I have so much appreciation for that.
you do, no one else did. That's the problem.
That is the problem. I love Starhawk.
I love Starhawk too. It's one of my
I don't.
favorite games. I defended it right here on this very channel,
Yes, you did.
and I tried to get something of a movement going, but it you can only do so much. My back hurts.
From
So
carrying that load,
yeah, it
the
was.
weight of that.
I knew it was an impossible climb, so I mean, I just had to do what I had to do. But yeah, just getting back to the E3, like I don't know, that game to me is just weird. It's in a weird area. It's kind of in that gray zone. I don't want to say no fly zone, but
Yeah.
it's like intermediate. It's there. It's a game.
It's a game, and you feel like you've seen this before. You see where it's gonna go, and honestly, it'd be more surprising to see it to be successful than fail.
I thought personally the way that we're going to end the stream was going to be with Red Dead 3. I refuse to call it Red Dead 2 because Red Dead Redemption is Red Dead 2.
Yeah, it
Okay?
is.
So I thought they were going to end with that, and instead they ended with this game again, and it felt kind of like Plan B. If I,
Yeah, like
it didn't feel like it was supposed to end it, but they were just like,
no one expected it.
yeah,
Yeah, no one
because
expected
you
it.
already saw it, so you're like, oh
Exactly.
yeah, that's out of the way. What are they going to end with? And this E3 needed to end with something big for them because all their big guns are out. Like I mentioned to you this before, Metal Gear is already out, Batman already came out, Uncharted just released,
Yep,
so they
yep.
don't have any of their big games. They had God of War, but they chose to start with it. I would have rather ended with it because that's the game that got people probably
But
arguably the most
I
excited.
don't. Yeah, I don't really disagree with their decision to put God of War first, purely because they wanted to get a little momentum going.
Right,
And that
right.
God of War was a good game for it, but they do need a strong finish,
And they just didn't
they-
have it. They
yeah,
they went out with a whimper.
yeah, the crowd definitely went mild.
Oh yeah. Oh well. Speaking of crowds going mild, perfect segue into the next game that they showed off. I think it was Detroit Become Human by Quantic Dreams.
Yeah.
Oh my Christ, this game! Like, I was sitting there watching it. I looked at the stream when I was, the live stream, and people were just kind of like, "Oh my God, can this just end?" Like, it went on too long.
Yeah.
you
The trailer told too much.
it showed too much, and I'm sure none of it is in the actual game, but like they were trying to get a point across. Like you can have the story play out several different ways. Okay, you say that, you move on. Instead, they hampered it. They
They
threw in scenario after scenario after scenario, and at a certain point, it was just like enough. This is like 7 minutes of the same shit, just replaying in a different fashion.
Mm-hmm.
No one cares. Everyone clocked out mentally for it. I clocked out mentally for it, and I was willing to give the game a shot because it had an interesting premise. Like I saw the crime scene stuff, and I thought, "Oh, this is cool. Like this is kind of
It felt like they were trying to expand upon what LOA Noir did,
Yeah.
where you have to read people's expressions and call them out on their bullshit
Right.
and negotiate with them. But
except you're a cyborg and you have no emotion."
yeah, it's an interesting take on that. But when I see that it's in, whenever I see Quantic Dreams, I always feel disappointed automatically because I feel like there's so much potential there that you're not gonna work on, because every time Quantic Dreams gives us the opportunity for alternative routes and scenarios to our actions and decisions, they always give us a certain limited number. Like there's always like only three ways you can go about this certain segment, and only three, and deviating from that is an impossible task for them apparently, because and it makes it worse with this trailer because they want to claim that you have an infinite amount of choices and your decisions will be met with consequences, and I'm like, you're bullshitting here, because I know I'm only gonna have 5 things to do, and I'm only 2 of them are gonna be interesting.
Right.
It always happens. And when I saw that this game was going to be VR, I knew that they were going to focus way too hard on getting it to work with the VR, that there was no way in hell they were going to program and animate alternative scenarios to actually even remotely fix, to get close to the amount of choices that we have available.
Yeah, a good half of this E3 was like VR, and that's my main concern because I don't know what the future is going to be like
Yeah.
for VR. I would hope that it's just a gimmick, or if it's kind of like the PlayStation Move, where it's not that much of a nuisance. Like certain games take advantage of it, that's cool, but don't force it. If every game all of a sudden starts becoming VR, then it's becoming a problem because I don't feel like personally investing $400, which they revealed on this E3 was the price point for that blasted freaking
Yeah.
headset.
That's the same amount as getting another PS4 and a handful of games. Like, okay, I'll spend my $400 elsewhere, thank you.
And they're boasting the fact that the VR is going to have at least 50 titles that come out for it. How many of those are cooking kitchen simulators? I don't know. We did get Resident Evil. That
Yeah.
was big, and it was weird because that was like from what I've been reading and hearing, it was an E3 2015 demo called Kitchen that Capcom teased, and they got so much good response for it that they decided to turn it into Resident Evil 7.
See, but that makes no sense to me. If originally it was intended to be its own IP, why slap Resident Evil on it? It doesn't seem in any way connected to the previous Resident Evil games. So why have it be in that same, sequence of video games? Because if you ever even looked at Resident Evil 6, you know how much flair and action there is to it. And then we go back to the horror, right?
Yeah.
And people are expecting the Resident Evil characters, the bioterrorism storyline, and it doesn't seem to be there at all. And
Yeah, it should have just been called Resident Evil,
yeah,
not Resident Evil 7, because if you're going to confuse people. Totally,
yeah,
that game has no connection to the past 3, I want to say.
yeah,
4
because that's
was-
when they started
yeah,
deviating. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
because
when it
4
started.
was pretty action heavy, 5 was ridiculous, and 6 just took the cake. 6
Yeah, it was 6 was just a straight up action movie, and we all know that.
like a really bad action movie. Like
Yeah.
the worst,
With
like
the-
Steve, a
yeah.
Steven Seagal action movie. There we go.
One-liners included. Like every character had a one-liner. Holy crap! But Resident Evil 7 needs to stand on its own, and trying to slap 7 on it is easily seen as a cash grab to get people, who want another sequel that's moving forward towards a horror genre, and they're just going to be ended up, disappointed that this is in no way connected to the original franchise. It needs to be its own thing. That's all I can. No.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't mind it if it was just called Resident Evil. Like if you call it Resident Evil 7, it's weird tonally. It just doesn't make sense tonally. Like going.
Yeah.
But again, VR. They showed off quite a number of things for VR. I'm not excited for VR. It might be cool, but it just needs to. I don't know. Sony has burned people so bad for getting invested in their third-party stuff. Like if it's not direct main console, Sony's gonna burn you. I got myself a Vita. You know how many games I've purchased on it? Probably all of 2. So
And that was a great investment, by the way.
yeah. So now all I really use my Vita for is to play Marvel vs. Capcom when I can't play it on my console, or to play PS1 games when I'm really, really bored. My Vita just sits there. It's the ultimate dust collector.
Yeah, there's no support for the Vita. It's really sad because it might have had potential had they probably had worked on it a bit more. Like probably added more features so that you can connect with it for the PS4.
And that's how I feel like it's going to be with this VR stuff. I mean, it's the
I
latest.
actually compare it more with the PlayStation Move. It's way gimmicky. They're trying to copy something else for the sake of being able to dip their finger in that pie. And I don't understand the point of this VR stuff. I didn't understand the point with Oculus Rift because if I want to immerse myself in the game, I would just put on a pair of headphones, turn off the light, and just play the game because that's all I need.
Yeah.
Because a good game can immerse a player on its own. I don't need a gimmick for that.
Well, it's the latest gaming gimmick. Everyone's in on it. It's the latest industry trend. So it'll probably last a little while, almost as much as 3D did. And we all know how 3D went down in the gaming industry.
Oh God, 3D TVs that no one could actually get to work right.
It came in and it went out, just like that.
I hope the VR ends up going out the door real quick because I don't want to see that last for very long. If we're gonna do VR, do it right.
Yeah, if VR is done right, it's a welcome addition. If VR is just going to be gimmicks and stupid shit, and if every game is trying to incorporate it with like the most dumbest things, like I can see right now, and of course, like mentioning this, they actually did announce a Batman VR game, but I can see like future like console Batman games
Yeah.
that will like all of a sudden like, hey, you know, you're playing the game, you're not using the VR set, you have to go into detective mode to do this like detective shit,
and that,
then you have to
that
put
shit
the
is
fucking
asinine.
thing. Yeah,
that
it's,
shit
it's
is
asinine. I could see that happening. It's something that probably will happen, probably with Activision, knowing how they are. But
that's like going into the movie theaters and then they'll tell you to put on your 3D glasses halfway through the movie just
like,
to throw something at your face.
It's like
then,
Spy Kids 3D.
Yeah, it's Spy Kids 3D. That shit it was so dumb where they tell you to take it off and then put it back on. I'm like, why?
What am I, a puppet?
It's like, why are you telling me what to do? I just want to sit here and watch this dollar store movie.
Please, if any developer is actually listening to this, do not do that with VR. I will go to your house and castrate you with a rusty pickaxe, okay? Just don't. Stop.
And it's that kind of thing that I'm actually seeing in the Final Fantasy VR.
Yeah. You're right, because that was another one that was mentioned.
They showed the game on its own. Like it looks great. Like it looks like it looks like a good step in the right direction for Final Fantasy. It's going to attract modern gamers, it's going to attract fans, and then they bring out this VR stuff. This VR stuff where you're in first person and you're awkwardly shooting a monster with a gun, and I'm expecting swords and magic. What is this? What is this? Why throw this in there when the main game is obviously going to be better? Why are we wasting our time with this? Why are you not like fixing bugs and errors for your game to make sure it goes as smooth as possible on day one?
And what I thought, I didn't even realize it was VR until the very end of it. And I was like, I thought it was multiplayer. I was telling you when we were playing Metal Gear.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, snap, are they actually including like live multiplayer and you can all help each other out? Because the way they were moving was kind of like, live players were controlling each individual character. I thought that was cool, considering that the playstyle for this Final Fantasy is more Kingdom Hearts oriented as opposed to the turn-based style, which I personally hate.
Yeah, I know. That's pretty much your stance on that is, please let me actually move my character when I want to move it.
Yeah, and let me not just stay there like a dick and take a hit.
Yeah.
That's... So, like, I was intrigued. I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, they're putting in a live multiplayer. You can play with all your buddies and do all this shit. And, I'll finally be able to experience a Final Fantasy with you, not as a spectator, Yeah. So, I thought that was cool. And then they were like, oh, this is just a VR thing. And I was like, are you kidding me?
They had to somehow shoehorn the VR, and I don't know why.
And apparently, from what I read today, people were not impressed by it. They thought it was really piss-ass poor.
It looks terrible. It looks like a terrible implementation of VR, and I don't understand why they would even waste their time with this.
Because it's the industry trend, and you got to go with what's going on, man.
I guess they're hoping that it's going to become a widespread thing that will catch on, and honestly, I don't see it. I don't see it.
Batman VR got teased, and it was just a tease. There's nothing really more to say. It's a Rocksteady game. So that's exciting because those guys are good. They're gold.
They're good. Yeah, they're good. When you put Batman in their hands, I can trust them.
It's a VR game though, so that's why I'm a little bit wary. But it's Rocksteady, so you know.
I mean, it's nice to see. It was nice to hear at least Mark Hamill as Joker again. So
for the seventh time.
Yeah, I mean, I always enjoy his performance though.
Yeah,
so I take what I get. But no, I feel like they're trying to shove VR down our throats. I don't want it. I think only a handful of people actually want it. And I feel bad for the people who actually spend their money on that when I'm sure they have much, much better uses for $400.
I'll probably get it just to see how it is.
You'll end up doing a review of it?
Oh, I don't know about that. That's a lot of work, man.
Yeah, it is.
I don't even know how to begin to capture things in VR. I think you're just capturing the game, but it's hard to kind of like explain how you feel what you're seeing through these hideous looking goggles.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. And then of course, Kojima came out on stage.
Everyone's excited. I was excited to see him.
Everyone was excited. And Kojima revealed the game with Norman Reedus and Norman Fetus, and it was weird. I have a theory to this.
Go for it. Yeah.
I think this was Kojima's plan B after PT got canceled because it has kind of most, or if not some of the things that PT had, including the baby and
Yeah.
some of the other weird kooky shit with the flying bodies at the very end. So I don't know. It seems like Kojima's pretty much sticking it to Konami, and there's the picture that's been going around, it's been
Yeah,
circulating
I've
around the
seen that.
internet
That is some funny
with
stuff.
with Norman on the side, and it says fuck you and your fucking pachinko machines or something along those lines.
But now that you mentioned that theory, I actually like it because it actually gives a lot of context to what was going down in that trailer. I watched the trailer and I thought it was artful, it was impactful, it had a lot of meaning to it, and it just I couldn't interpret it as
It was
as
very
anything.
vague.
It was very vague.
Your
I was
standard Kojima trailer.
Yeah, I was like, wow, Kojima's really outdoing himself.
What the
Does it
fuck
mean?
is this?
It's like, what does it mean? And like now that you're telling me this theory, I'm like, okay, I can actually see this working. I can see this working like that, and I think I might be down for that, especially if it's Kojima, because he's a nutball when it comes to his writing. But when you think about it, when you sit down and think about it, it actually is pretty interesting.
And not only that, but the games he makes, they're fun games. They've always
They're
been fun games. He's not. I don't think he's had a game that's really been on the shit
Or-
side. Yeah,
yeah.
like you can't really. You can say his stories are convoluted. You can say his
Yeah,
stories are
absolutely.
way too
Drawn out,
nanomachine oriented. There's
There's a lot of cop outs, a lot of Deus Ex Machina, but like in the end, the
The game
games
is fun.
themselves,
Yeah.
the games themselves are fun. That is the biggest point. That is the biggest reason why I will always tell people, play Metal Gear Solid 5. The gameplay is fun.
yeah.
The game is fun.
The story might suck,
The story sucks,
but the game is fun. Like
You will have fun. Like yeah, it's so easy to waste like 30 hours just playing the game alone. You don't even have to care about the story. Just goof off with the game, fuck with people on the large terrain that you're given. It's a lot of fun, and that's why I'll trust Kojima on this. I'll trust him working with Sony, and I'm anticipating what he's got for us.
Yeah, I remember I saw something briefly mention that he was not going to let what happened with Konami kind of hamper his creativity and his vision. And you can tell he had a vision with what was going to be Silent Hills. And, now that he's his own company, and he owns his own company, his own development group, and he's free of the constraints of the terrible and tyrannical Konami,
Yeah, they seem far more interested in making money now rather than
then
making that investment and making
yeah.
making that investment and making millions later. Like they seem to be fed up with this whole waiting game that is the process for Kojima making his
Yeah.
game.
So I feel like this is going to be what was going to be his vision of Silent Hills. It's just under a different name, and probably.
It probably take a completely different direction now that he's not having to hold himself back.
Yeah. He's free of the shackles. I mean, you saw it in that trailer. I think that's the first time I've ever seen someone's ass on an E3 screen. I might be a little bit off. I think Far Cry did it first. They showed tits on the screen with Ubisoft, but I think this is the first major distributor that's actually shown ass on screen. And
Honestly,
lo and behold, it's Norman Reedus' ass. So eat your heart out, women.
I mean, like if that's the kind of stuff you like, Kojima's never been shy of that. He's always been
He's
been very into like being gratuitous, being very real and raw. Like if a guy has an ass and he's wearing tight spandex, he's gonna show that ass.
Or like Johnny taking a shit in Metal Gear 4.
Yeah.
In the oil truck.
We didn't ask for it, but Kojima's gonna show us.
Because it's Kojima. I mean, why not? Fucking
Why not?
hell. And then we got to, right after that, I think we got like Star Wars Lego stuff, like Lego Dimensions and stuff like that.
I didn't really care for it, to be honest.
Yeah, it was more like filler stuff to the next big announcement, which was, of course, the big announcement, the thing that you've probably all been waiting for me to rant and rave about.
Ooh.
Insomniac Games with their new IP,
Spooderman.
Spider-Man PS4. Oh
Hashtag
boy.
Spider-Man PS4.
Okay, so I have a lot to say about
Oh,
this.
I know you do. That's
I
why I'm
made
glad to be here.
I made a rant video about it, and I still didn't even cover probably half of what my mind was actually thinking or processing at the time because I didn't sleep on it, and I have slept on it a couple of days, and so now I'm here with an articulated mind to really destroy this game more. So,
Okay, like wait, like right out of the gate. Right out of the gate, I gotta put some so I gotta put some stuff out there. I'm not as big as into Spider-Man as my cousin over here. He's wonderfully fanatical about it. I love him. I love how he gets so passionate about it, and that's why I'm gonna be the outsider opinion here. I'm gonna try to do my best to sort of give it a fair, less opinionated, like by judgment on it because he is gonna tear it a new one because he has dealt with the ups and downs of the Spider-Man video game industry, and I get that. And as you know, as a casual observer, I want to give them a chance.
I'm going to say this right now. I've been playing Spider Man games since I was about 3 years old.
Yeah.
I grew up on the NES, SNES era, so one of my very first games that I ever played was Spider Man and the X Men in Arcade's Revenge. And if anyone ever knows that game, they know how horrible that game is. It's an LGN made game, made specifically for kids, developed for people with like a fucking neurosurgeon's brain because that game was so goddamn hard. I've been exposed to so many bad Spider-Man games, and I've seen so many Spider-Man games over my life
They can call you an expert pretty much at this point.
that I know when I see something and it's not right to me, I'm not feeling confident in it, I'm not feeling good about it, I have valid reason. And with this latest Insomniac trailer, it looks like, and this is my theory, okay, because I've said this on Twitter, I've said this on that rant video, I said this
Yep.
pretty much everywhere I could.
He's gonna say it one more time.
It looks like Beanox hand-me-downs. And the reason why I say that is I feel like because of what happened with Marvel, how they reacquired all their assets so that they can make their own games by their own development team, and then all of a sudden that shit the bed. They couldn't do it anymore. They didn't want to do it, so they went back to the old style instead of, developing games for themselves and for their own characters. They gave it to publishers and developers for them to do it for them. So what I felt like happened was that, of course, we all know the story of the Amazing Spider-Man 3. We all know that that movie got canceled right out of the bat after Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
So, of course, the natural progression of Spider-Man games, at least over there in Activision headquarters and their assembly line process of developing games, was that when that movie came out, the third Spider-Man game under the Beanox helm would have came out. But then Marvel came in and they stepped in and they reacquired all those assets. So whatever Beanox was working on, Marvel has it. They've been having it for a while. They just didn't know what the developer to give it to. So when Insomniac stepped in, I'm pretty sure what they did was like, hey, here's what Beanox was working with. Do something with it. So that's why I think the game looks similar, is because of those reacquired assets. Whatever they were working on, they got a hold of. So now it's their property. They own it. And now that they have partnered with Insomniac to make the game, they gave them their thing, their work.
Their work, yeah.
So Insomniac is doing basically the pick-me-up that Beanox got shafted on. And that's why I think the game looks so similar, but that's not a good thing, because the Beanox games for a while have been pretty lackluster, pretty generic, pretty by the numbers, and they just don't look good, they don't feel good, they're not fun to play, and it sucks. That's pretty much what I can say about it. I'm not saying that Insomniac is going to make an outright terrible game. I'm just saying from a visual presentation, it's already flagging major flags with me. Just because they're using the Beanox work. I would have rather had Marvel say, hey, Beanox is working on this. Ask them if they wanted to use it. I'm probably sure they probably asked, and Insomniac was like, fuck making a new thing for these guys. We'll do that in the second game. Because, I understand, like, it's hard work to build something from the ground up. And, the last game that Insomniac Games did, I completely forgot about this because it was just one of those, like, one-off games, was Sunset Overdrive for the
right.
for the Xbox
They
One.
did do that. I forgot about that.
Right, that flew over my mind, too. So, they did a pretty good job. Like, the parkour in that game was pretty fun. It looked like a fun game to play. So, they have potential to do
They do. And,
really good.
Yeah. I mean, I've always pretty much trusted Insomniac to be able to produce good stuff. Whether or not I would play it is a different story, but that just depends on my personal taste in video games. But I've always trusted Insomniac because it goes all the way back to when they used to be very close with Naughty Dog. I'm a huge Naughty Dog fan, and by proxy, I'm a huge Insomniac fan. I play both Crash Bandicoot, I played Spyro the Dragon, I played Jack and Daxter, and I played Ratchet and Clank. I've always been, I've always whatever game that either companies produce, I was on it. When then the PS3 era came out, and then they shifted towards,
First-person shooters.
first-person shooters to get on the bandwagon that everyone else was doing during that era of gaming. And I saw what it was I saw what it was, and I wasn't having any part of that. So I just stuck to my Naughty Dog.
And don't get us wrong, the Resistance games were great. The first two, anyways. The third one was kind of shaky, but it's one of those things where you kind of look back and you say, this isn't the developer that I used to know.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. I know it's like it's clear to me that the team has like shifted. Like people probably leaving and all that stuff.
So they have an identity crisis.
Yeah, they're trying to find what they want, and Sunset Overdrive kind of proves it to me that they're not sure where to go, and that's why I want to give them the benefit of the doubt because of what they were, but I wouldn't put it past them to not completely give everything they should be giving with what they have, with the legacy they've built for themselves so far. But I am going to give them that chance, and I will probably be playing this game just out of support for them.
I need to see more of the game, honestly. But I just, from what I saw, from what my eye detected, like I said, I've been playing Spider-Man games my whole life. Yeah. And I know shit when I see it. I called out The Amazing Spider-Man 2 months before that game came out, and I said it looks like a carbon cutout copy of The Amazing Spider-Man 1. And what did it turn out to be? A literal cutout carbon copy of that game.
No, it was the poor man's cutout.
It was even worse. Yeah,
it was the poor man's cutout. Like they took stuff away from it.
They added new stuff, but none of it fucking worked properly. I mean, it was a nightmare. That game was a nightmare. So when I see that Beanox engine being replicated under Insomniac's helm, it worries me because that's not a good engine to be using. Firstly, and it's just. The snippets of gameplay we saw, it all looked way too familiar. And to me, that just sets flags off. That's like seeing your ex-girlfriend at the mall or something. You just don't want to be there. You want to get the hell out. That's how I feel with this game. Not only that, the fucking suit looks horrible.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that suit. The white on the white trimmings on the side of his eye make me think that it's like he's like wearing a tracksuit or something. I have no idea what's that all about. Like why the white?
Yeah, it looks like he's wearing yoga pants too. Like
yeah, he's wearing yoga pants.
They used so many inspirations from so many different costumes when they didn't really need to. Just what's wrong with the classic look? What's wrong with it? Instead, they just went with this like really abstract design with this huge emblem on his chest and his back, and it's white.
They made a very odd choice in their decision to make an amalgamation of past costumes, and then it seems to be like they chose like pretty bad combinations in general. But the one thing that kind of set a flag for me personally in the trailer was the fact that when they were actually demonstrating the actual in-game like mechanics, they were like doing really fast jumps.
Yep.
I know it was going in tune with the music, but their decision to put the actual gameplay during those points in the trailer makes me concerned that they're not very proud of what they're doing right now. Like they don't want to show off what how fluid the mechanics of the fighting and the navigating around the city. It concerns me that they don't want to show that off.
Yeah, it's very wishy-washy. It's what I said in my rant video. It didn't seem like a confident game. Usually when you have a good IP like this and you're doing something well, like the Batman series has. You boister in what you've done.
Yeah,
you show off.
You show everything. You don't do any cuts. Not even if you're doing it in tune with the music. Like, it was a very weird decision, and it feels like they were intentionally doing it like that, because I don't know why. Like, that's not something you should rely upon when you're trying to demonstrate the game to potential buyers.
And some of the stuff they showed off, people defended it, I don't know why, but it's straight out of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Like, when he jumps on the car and he webs that guy up and he takes him out of the car, he was on, like, the Gatling gun.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's from the Amazing Spider-Man 2. You would do like this little QuickTime event when you would have these car chase sequences, and he would do stuff like that and throw a guy out of the car and web him up. It's the same exact thing, and
Yeah.
it's stuff like that that sets off a flag with me, because it's even if they change the animation up, the concept is still the same.
Yeah, and it really supports the idea that these are, in fact, resources from the previous company that had this. And I don't know, that's kind of a foreboding thought to have, but
And I
they might be
understand
able to
it.
work with it. They
Yeah,
might.
I understand that. Like looking back on it now, I understand it because if this is indeed the Beanox engine, which I believe it to be, I am 110% sure that this is what Marvel did when they reacquired the assets from Activision. That this is the Beanox engine and they handed it. The same exact thing happened when Treyarch got the rights to Spider-Man after Neversoft left the table, or I should say Vicarious Visions after Enter Electro. They gave the game to Neversoft, to Treyarch, and they used the Neversoft engine for the very first Spider-Man movie game to kind of get their groundwork, to kind of get accustomed to the character.
Yeah.
And then with the second game, they came out, and it was a completely different game. They blew up the Spider-Man world, and for years to come, that's the game that everyone talks about. That's the go-to Spider-Man game. Everyone loves Spider-Man
Yeah,
2.
everyone loved the web. Everyone loves the navigating of the city because the engine works in its favor. But that's why I'm like, it could be a good thing or a bad thing that they have pretty much hand-me-down resources, because it could be a prelude to something great. Like they can work off it and actually push the engines where they need to go, maximizing the potential. And I can see Insomniac doing that, but at the same time, I could see them also being afraid to make those pushes out of fear of like messing up the IP if it goes awry.
They've been saying that they've been collaborating with Marvel, working on the game, and that they've been, just like hands-on with Marvel, and that there's more to the game than just swinging. Which, something like that. When they say something like that, it scares me.
Yeah, there's more to this. And so I'm like, have you seen
It's
Spider-Man?
it's a true statement. But swinging is the most important thing in that game.
Yeah,
If you don't get that right,
you have to take it seriously. You have to take it seriously.
yeah, if you don't get that right, you're fucked for the whole game. Because first and foremost, that's the only way he can get around the city. If you can't get that right, which what they show very briefly, like half a second worth of footage of him actually swinging, it looks like the Beanox style swinging, and I hate that because he moves so goddamn slow and it's so sluggish.
I remember. Yeah, you showed me, and they try to give you the impression that you're moving fast, but
They ham the camera into your back to make it seem like you're moving at a speed, and you're not. You're going slower than you normally would.
they're trying to trick you, and it's really It's really disrespectful to do that to a player when you're not actually moving that fast.
But yeah, like I don't know. It worries me when they say stuff like that because it might not be the most quintessential important thing, but in reality it is because that's how you move around the entire game. Everything revolves around that mechanic.
Yeah, because it's a trademark of Spider-Man. You feel like Spider-Man when you can swing, when the fluidity of your swing and your momentum are real. They feel real. If you can't get that down, you don't feel like Spider-Man, and therefore you don't feel like you're playing a Spider-Man game.
Yeah. And like I was thinking about potentially doing a video of like how to make a good Spider-Man game for dummies, and that was going to be one of the things because for the last, I want to say, give or take, probably we're close, 8 years, probably around 8 years.
Oh, boy.
Web swinging has been mitigated into just nothing.
It's so secondary. It's like there's like a priority list of what they got to focus on, and for some reason, swinging is not on the top.
Yeah, they rather focus on the combat, and even the combat isn't as good as it used to be.
Yep.
And it's weird because that's it's one of the things you like to do as Spider-Man. You like to get in there, and you like to get in with enemies. You like to dodge, use your spider sense. That has been mitigated. The overall effectiveness and usefulness of webbing, which is another thing that's majorly important.
Yeah,
that Beanox.
His use of webs is very important to video games.
That Beanox has completely skipped the table on. Like webbing was so mitigated in those games, specifically their games. Like you never used webbing for anything. Webbing was a gimmick, at best. It was just, I don't understand. Like Spider-Man 2 perfected how swinging and web should be integrated into combat, into swinging around, to traversing, pretty much everything. Everything you can imagine and picture Spider-Man using webbing for, they perfected it in Spider-Man 2. And then right after that, every other single game, Ultimate Spider-Man included, they've kind of fucked the webbing up. They made it just into a gimmick. You don't really use it for anything.
That's kind of sad, considering those are the key traits to his powers.
Yeah, and the Amazing
Otherwise,
Spider-Man
he's just punching and kicking. Like,
yeah, and that's what the future games became. He's just punching and kicking. It's God of War with the Spider-Man license, and it's not even close to probably as fun as that game is.
no, yeah, I
So,
doubt it.
so I mean, I just want to see more gameplay footage for it. I'm not gonna be as hard on it knowing now and having slept on it, but I am still upset that they're using that engine. I would have rather them had
Start from scratch.
start from scratch, make a completely new engine, and
I mean, they could totally do that. If you've seen like their Ratchet, they're still making Ratchet and Clank games surprisingly. And if you've looked at that and seen the engines they work for that, they could potentially like make a Spider-Man game from that. But they've chosen to work with something else completely different. And I don't know. I really worry for them. I feel like this is they're playing with fire here, playing doing something that's not entirely their own, and I only wish for the best for them.
and I'll tell you what, Insomniac, if you want to make me happy, the first thing you got to do is axe that costume. Keep the eyes, keep the red. Get rid of the fucking spider. Get rid of those ugly pants. Get rid of the gray in his arms, and just go with the classic red and blue. Don't change it up. I get that they want to do their own thing because this is their stamp on Spider-Man. But that costume needs to go because it's offensive to my eyes. It's like if someone put a bleeding asshole in front of my face, that would be the equivalent of me looking at this suit.
Oh God, that is an image I do not want you putting in my head.
Well, I'm sorry. I hate that suit. And I'm not the only one. A lot of people seem to really hate it. But of course, you have your staunch defenders of anything Spider-Man who don't want to hear anything negative because they just can't handle it. So
Those people are weird, by the way.
yeah, so in case any of you who are watching this right now commented on my other video saying that I was a little bit what's the word? Too
Aggressive.
probably aggressive. That I wasn't critical. Not really. Not critical. That's not the word.
Overly critical, I guess, would be the word. Judgmental.
Yeah, probably overly critical and not really looking at it in a constructive way. This is for you because now I pretty much have gone through this constructively and I've given my voice on what I feel needs to be worked on, in order to make this a successful Spider-Man game. They just, the little things like the suit. Yeah. That they go a long way, but the most important thing is that they get not only the character right, not only the writing right, because that's
yeah, that's something that you kind of come to expect in a Spider-Man, but it'd be appreciated if they work on that.
No, but it's never been in a Spider-Man game. Every single Spider-Man game that's ever been released has at best an average story.
Yeah.
And their villains aren't even memorable enough.
Yeah, but it'd be appreciated if they work on the story.
Just work on the story. Give the villains scope, please. God, that's a whole nother video.
Oh, yeah. I want to get into that just a little bit, just a tiny bit, but characterization of villains is so important, and I don't understand, like, series, comics, stories that decide that the villain is only a secondary factor that only adds conflict and is not of character of his own, that he has no motivations and that he exists only to perpetuate the fact that the main character is a hero that needs to save the day. Yeah. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, that's been the Spider-Man games in a nutshell. Every single one of them, and I don't even count Spider-Man 2. Ultimate Spider-Man probably is the only exception to the rule, and just probably barely. I mean, there's not even a real bad guy in that game. I mean, you have Bolivar Trask, I should say, not Oliver. Bolivar Trask, who's probably I think he's the big baddie. He's considered the big baddie, but he's barely in the game. And I mean, he has motivations, but they're never really fully fleshed out. You have to kind of guess what he wants. Yeah. It just doesn't make
when you have
sense.
To play a game when you're playing a game where you're assuming what the villain is up to, why he wants to do it. That's not really good writing.
Not really good writing. And it's not Ultimate Spider-Man's fault. They're just going by the source material. But what they choose to leave out, and what they choose to keep in, and then how they pace it's a problem. But I mean, that game has probably the best Spider-Man writing in any video game, and it's sad.
Yeah, that's a sad example.
And that it's been so many years, and haven't had any really good stories come out from Spider-Man. And it's baffling because that guy has probably the best gallery of rogues in the Marvel universe. Like, his villains are all really good villains. Some of the lesser guys, like we're talking about, like Vermin and stuff like that, those guys, they suck. They're
They
not
do.
really.
But
They're,
it's
you never hear about them,
yeah, but you do hear a lot about Spider-Man bad guys in general. Like me being someone who's not completely into Spider-Man lore, I know a lot of the villains. Like I recognize a lot of the villains, and I think that's a good thing. I can't name a single villain in the Iron Man comics.
Oh,
I
I mean,
can't.
Mandarin. Come
Yeah,
on,
Mandarin.
Mandarin.
Oh my God. Like seriously, there's so many that I don't know. But when you talk about Spider-Man, I can actually name off a few,
Yeah,
like
you
the
got
Lizard,
the lizard, the Green
Green Goblin, the
Goblin,
Hobgoblin, Doctor Octopus,
Shocker,
Mysterio,
Venom, Mysterio, Hydro Man,
Carnage,
Sandman. I
the
mean,
Rhino. Like there's so many good ones, and there's so many of them that I actually know.
and a lot of people. All right, so here's another thing. Here's another bone of contention that I've been seeing about this game, not because of Insomniac, but because of the community. They've been bitching for Mysterio, and I'm like, why? Give a guy a chance. Like, give Moreland a chance. I don't know if you know who Moreland is, but Moreland is basically a fucking vampire, and that dude's strong as shit. And he's wrecked Spider-Man a couple of times. He's pretty vicious.
I think I might actually remember him from the animated series.
Yeah, from the animated series. He's a vicious son of a bitch. And him and Spidey have had squabbles before.
Yeah, they had Blade appear in in the animated series because of him, right?
I think so. I don't remember. It's been so long.
It has been a while, yeah.
But he's a villain who's kind of like he's an upper mid. Like recently, he's probably like upper mid in the echelon of like the gallery of rogues for Spidey, and he's a guy you've never seen in a game before. They usually always go with the same villains all the time.
Yeah, the ones people know.
Yeah, you have your Shockers, you have your Venoms, you have your Carnages, the Green Goblin we've seen so many times. They did Electro twice. Mysterio's been in I think three. I'm gonna count it out. Let me see. He's been in Spider-Man 2000. He was in Spider-Man 2. He was in. If we're counting, friend or foe, he was in that game.
Oh boy.
He was in Ultimate Alliance, the first game.
Yeah.
He's been in so many, like he's appeared so many times. That's the point I'm making. He's been in at least 5 games, where some of these other characters have only been in like 1 or 0. Give another villain a chance.
Yeah, if you bring out some obscure characters, people will be interested. I can guarantee that. Like the Batman Arkham series has done that, and it's worked to a very successful degree. There's a lot of Batman characters, Batman villains that I didn't know about, but the Arkham games made me really interested in how they interact with Batman.
And look no better than Marvel vs. Capcom. Nobody knew who fucking Rocket Raccoon was.
And then that was a perfect gateway opportunity to
for
bring out
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, and everyone was like, "Yeah, that's a great movie."
Yeah, and everyone was like, "Oh, this fucking raccoon is awesome." So there you go. That it all starts from there.
Yeah, you bring out the obscure characters, do them well, and people will respond in kind. Like, I can guarantee you that. Like, it's like people don't like really like developers seem to underestimate the value of like hard work. Like,
yeah, just build a character up, make him interesting, make him compelling. It doesn't matter who he is. If you make him interesting, people will gravitate to him, and they'll be like, "Oh, this villain is awesome. Let me read up on him more." And then all of a sudden, you start seeing that villain appear everywhere else because he gains a cult following. Before Thor, nobody gave a fuck about Loki. Before the Avengers, nobody gave a fuck about Loki.
yeah, and then the actor did really well. They wrote him really well, and look at that. He's one of the more popular villains because not only they decided not to actually kill him off, thank God for that, but they actually made him compelling. So there you go. A little hard work, a little bit of interest in the character you're writing goes a long way.
And now to segue into something that is also a long way from home. Crash Bandicoot.
Oh my God! Woo! I love talking about this.
Oh my God.
Crash Bandicoot. Okay, let's get into it because I have some very, very, very mixed feelings on the Crash Bandicoot.
I have nothing but negative feelings towards it, and I feel like I'm the only one. Everyone lost their shit, okay? Because Sony came out and they were boistering the whole Crash thing. They came out with the music, the shadow walking with that.
Yeah, they came out with the Crash Bandicoot 3 theme. They were very aware that the nostalgia factor was going to kick in hard for people.
Well, people have been wanting Crash under the Sony banner. Now listen to what I'm saying. Crash under the Sony banner.
That's a very important point because it really decides whether or not the games are going to be done well or not.
Because, but they've been wanting Crash for so long.
Yeah.
And like he's synonymous with the console. Any of us who have grown up in the '90s know that Crash was the unofficial mascot of the PlayStation brand.
I don't even think it was unofficial because if I recall, the conception for Crash Bandicoot was created so that it could compete with the likes of Mario and Sonic when they were making the PlayStation. So they requested Naughty Dog to be like, "Give us your character so we can make him a mascot." But they never really, he never really took off in the same way. So guess you could say unofficial.
But yeah, people have been wanting and craving a good Crash Bandicoot game under the Sony banner for so long that when these rumors were coming up and all these hints were being dropped, and when the dude wore the shirt at E3 a couple of years ago, you know, they were very, very, very excited for any potential news. So when the guy came out on stage and he was, the music was playing and the shadow was behind him, when that all happened, people were like, "Oh shit, it's happening. Yeah. It's done. The deal was made. He's no longer with Activision.
He's back home.
He's back home." And then they announced that they've worked with their partners at Activision to bring back the original Crash Bandicoot games, and remastered from the ground up.
And then it all sunk in that we didn't get him back, and he's only being lent to us for the sake of profit.
And then they go to that awful Skylanders footage, which no one cared.
I can assure you, no one in the audience cared. Like
they're
like projecting this onto an audience of like adults and young late teenagers, and it's weird because none of them would even remotely glance at this game had it not been for Crash being there. So it's weird that they decided to do that.
And the most embarrassing part about it was the fact that the crowd was I think they were the loudest they were that entire night, probably with the only exception being God of War, to see the Crash Bandicoot finally come back to the PlayStation. Yeah. Only to have their hearts and dreams and souls crushed under this fucking Activision soul by their actual heel. Yeah. And it just shat on everything. Like that, I don't even know if anyone really, because they were cheering when the guy was saying we've worked with our partners in Activision. So I don't even think
it didn't register. That. Yeah, it might not have completely registered, but
once that Skylanders footage showed, everyone went quiet, deathly quiet. It was scary. It was like a funeral went off, and that was the actual moment that you knew it was done. There was no way, and we talked about this. Like we thought that the deal was going to be that Sony was going to reacquire the asset. They were going to repurchase the character back from Activision and have it be their own. That's what everyone wanted. In a perfect world, that would be the best outcome.
Yeah. That Activision would realize that, we're not actually doing anything with this character, nor can we really make much gain on it. Why don't we actually give it to someone who can do something with it?
But the problem is that Activision knew that there was a little bit of a cult following all the tease that they've been doing with Crash for all these years. And so now they're playing hardball. If Sony was to get this character, they were going to put a ridiculous price on it. And of course, Sony is not willing to compromise on that.
They're not. Yeah, I mean, it's the character that's only banking on nostalgia factor. No offense to Crash, but that's pretty much his appeal right now. So they decided to strike a deal. Let's work together, bring out the old games, work them from the ground up, make it something that we can both make something from.
But the worst part is we're going to be playing these remastered games, and they're going to have that Activision logo on it.
Oh, yeah.
That's not something I want to see, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I get you. I understand that completely. That is not something I want to see. Because I'm going to be watching that was the one thing I loved about the Crash Bandicoot games. They had really awesome, like blood-pumping intros that would get you excited to press that start button as soon as it started. So, when we see that the logo being ruined by the Activision logo, I feel like things are not the same.
Yeah, you're not going to see the Universal Globe anymore. It's just going to be the Activision logo.
Yeah. So you're going to be very much aware that this isn't like your childhood. This is the real world, and business deals. Life doesn't work that way.
It's unfortunate. That probably pissed me off the most. The art pissed me off more than the Spider-Man game. You were there. I was upset.
Yeah, I heard it 100%. You were growling into your microphone.
I couldn't believe it. Like it was such a stab to the heart. Like at that point, once the Skylanders footage showed, because it had been rumored for like weeks that was going to be the reveal for Crash Bandicoot, and I was like, that can't be it. Like they couldn't possibly do that. It was like the biggest troll. Sony managed to both do really well and then troll their audience at the same time.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to see Crash come back under the Activision banner. I'm sorry.
No,
I'll be the first.
Yeah, I mean, I know there are people that actually do appreciate what Activision brought with Crash after he left Naughty Dog, but I'm one of those fans who don't. I don't appreciate what they did with Crash afterward. I don't like what they did with his story afterwards. It feels like it drifted so far apart from its origins that I couldn't see it as a Crash game anymore.
And yeah, Crash at a certain point in time, after the Naughty Dog separation, after the Crash bashes and stuff like that, when they were on the PS2 era of games, I think it was what was it? Not Wrath of Cortex, it was something else.
Something Cortex. I don't know.
But yeah, you had that game and you had Twin Sanity. Both of them were decent games. I mean, they weren't great, but they were decent games that kept kind of true to the original game. And then after that, you got your Mind Over Mutant and all of these other gimmick games that just were horrible. They didn't represent anything that the character was. They were just selling
his name.
Yeah, just using his name, bastardizing him.
And then obviously he fell to anonymity. He fell to obscurity because no one really. He had no identity at that point.
He wasn't Crash anymore. He was just some random generic animal with a Crash name and a couple of his sounds. And apparently his villains. I will give them this, though. And this is more of a knock on... Not really a knock, but this is more like a credit to the actor. But the guy who's been voicing Cortex has been consistently doing it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so Clancy Brown, hats off to you for keeping true with that series. I mean, he's the lone trooper, and when everyone else gave up on Crash, he's always been there. So if you want to thank anyone, thank Clancy Brown because he's been the Mask, he's been both Masks, I think, and he's been Cortex in like every single game. So Clancy Brown, my hats off to you for keeping true.
Thank you for keeping the dream alive, keeping my childhood alive. And I thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't. And then they ended with Days Gone.
Oh God, yes.
And we already discussed that to death.
We discussed that to death. Not impressed. I might be keeping my eye on it. I don't know. It has a lot to go to impress me.
But that was the Sony conference in a nutshell. I mean, there was a couple of other things that we probably skipped over, but they're not of any real significant value. I mean, there's like Star Wars VR, and then
and then we have that new Gorilla game.
Oh, Horizon. That's right. We didn't even talk about that one. That one is it's intriguing.
I mean, it has the main protagonist is a female character. Hashtag equality and all that. It's good.
Hashtag SJW.
Yeah, like hooray! They'll get a kick out of that. But I found it weird that they lived in a world that had regressed so far back to the age of the tribes, despite the fact that they were very much using the technology of these creatures that were ruling over them. And I'm like, but why are we still living in huts? Like, why are we in this position? Like, I guess I'm sure the game would probably explain that. Maybe there's some larger being that's like completely like raising their homes every time they try to build and evolve.
Yeah, it's like Terminator.
Yeah,
everyone's living in ghettos,
and because they have no choice to, otherwise they'll get taken down for it. But it's like, I feel like the trailer didn't explain enough, and I guess that's a good thing if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, it was mostly just to show off the new mechanics, the RPG system, the characterization of the main character.
Yeah.
And it was okay. I mean, it's not anything we haven't seen before. It looks cool.
Looks interesting.
It's definitely something different from Guerrilla because they've been on the Killzone bandwagon ever since they've been developing games for the PS.
And they've been slowly killing Killzone more.
Oh my God! Well, that's another discussion we're gonna have another time. Poor Killzone should have been put down like a rabid dog after 3, but they kept going. They tried.
I mean, it's a good first-person shooter gameplay-wise, but the story is what it lives and breathes on. It's not holding to the legacy that the first one built. And
the first game, good times.
It's really sad to see that. But it's called Horizon Zero Dawn, right?
Yeah, decent game, decent looking game. if they do something to wow me, because it's one of those games where it's like you look at it and it's like, oh, it looks nice, it's pretty, it's visually appealing,
Yeah.
but there's nothing really, there's no hook to it. There's not anything that makes me say, oh, I have to get this.
Yeah, nothing that really made it stand out from games that I've seen, because I've seen this game looks like Assassin's Creed and Witcher 3, and I've seen what those games have to offer, and I literally saw all of that in the trailer, and I'm like, all right, what do you got else? What else do you got?
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna copy those games, don't copy them exactly to the T. Do it better. And
Yeah, go one step further.
I don't know about Guerrilla Games. I'm glad that they're doing something different. They definitely needed to get off the kill zone.
Yeah, they did.
So I might pick this one up just because it's something different.
I'm actually gonna be like wait for reviews to come out, read those out, gauge how the public is reacting to it, and make my own decision on whether I'll get it. But it looks interesting, and I might actually be inclined to pick it up. It's a guerrilla game. It might be worth it.
So there's your E3 synopsis from us too. What do you think about E3 overall, Angel?
Well, we're talking about the Sony conference. If we're talking about
But
just
yeah,
that,
yeah, Sony E3.
Sony, it was decent. Like you said much earlier, all the big hitters are already out. We already own them.
Yeah.
So there's not much to it. God of War is something to look forward to. I think that's it for games to really look forward to.
Yeah, we're in a recession period, and again, I'm shocked that we didn't see anything from Rockstar. That was rumored to come a long time, and like I said, my theory is that they were going to show Red Dead 3, not 2. Remember, Redemption was 2, Revolver was 1. This next Red Dead is going to be 3.
More people need to play Revolver because that's actually a really good game.
So I have a theory that they were going to end with Red Dead, and something happened along the way, and they kind of shift plans, and they put the Days Gone one instead. But I think, who knows?
Yeah, it might have been a thing that like Rockstar might be coming to explain in days come.
Or really Sony's just kind of leaving it for the PlayStation experience, because they can't show off everything here. So
oh yeah, true.
That could be a thing too. But yeah, it's one of those E3s. It wasn't overly exciting. There was some exciting stuff to it, but for the most part, it was kind of in between. And I kind of knew that going in. It was a recession period. I had my E3 predictions on my Twitter where I said it's probably just going to be really ham-fisted with VR stuff and an occasional surprise.
You were 100% right on that.
Yeah, so it was definitely ham-fisted with VR shit, and there was a couple of surprises and some kind of lukewarm games. So
yeah, some games that you want to keep your eye out. Some games you were actually going to consider getting,
and then some games that just pissed me off to no belief.
This game had it. It had it all. It had its ups and downs, mostly downs.
Yeah. So to people saying that Sony won E3, I mean, I don't know what past E3s you've seen. Personally, I think what was it? Was it 2012? I think the one where Jack Tretton just shat on the Xbox One. That's like my favorite E3, where he was just like, you don't have to. Always be online. You can share your games with your friends. He just shat on the fucking the Xbox One.
Rightfully so, because that shit is garbage.
And it's been stuff that we've been doing for like years. It's not anything groundbreaking or revolutionary.
No, that's how games. That's how the video game community grew by interacting with other gamers.
Just the fact that people were so hyped over something that we've been doing for years. It's so funny, but yeah, like this E3 for me in a nutshell was kind of a mixed bag. There's some games I'm keeping my eye on. Obviously, I'm keeping my eye on the Spider-Man game, Spider-Man PS4.
Yep, that's your life.
I gotta study it. I gotta see what else is coming out for it. Snippets of information here and there, what I can dig out from some sources.
I'll be keeping my eye out for the Crash Bandicoot remake.
Oh God! Every time you say that name,
I know.
It just brings back bad memories.
I know. I'm actually not too thrilled with how he looks now in Skylander. I'm hoping that's just a Skylander appearance.
Imagine that's actually his design for the remaster.
God, he's like showing way too much teeth, and it's scaring the crap out of me.
His jaw is like really abstract, like it's
it's like they're trying to do a cartoon look and a realistic look.
It's like they're trying to do the look that they give you on the side of the screen representing your lives. That's the face.
Yeah. Oh,
he's never looked like that. So
that's why I'm praying that that's just how he looks in Skylanders, and that they're going to go with a different look in the actual remake.
I gotta figure out who's developing the game, and then I'll be able to just decipher. Because if it's Beanox, I fucking swear
Lose your shit?
I will actually lose my shit. I
Yeah,
might blow
no,
them up.
I agree with you. Now, if it if it turned out that Naughty Dog was remaking it again,
No, no way in hell.
I know there's no way because they're pretty much
We're
you know,
too
just,
hipsters.
yeah, no, they're like
We're too edgy.
wipe
We're
their hands
edgelords.
clean of that age. You know, they'll make a lighthearted joke, a reference here and there, but
They'll put it in Uncharted 4.
yeah, that was a great
Create a little nostalgic trip.
yeah. Spoiler alert: we were screaming like little girls when we saw that.
I was screaming like a little girl. You didn't see it until after, and you were like,
I
"What?"
I was still screaming. Okay, don't get me wrong. That shit was great. But yeah,
All right.
E3 was pretty. Eh.
Meh.
Eh.
All right, so that pretty much does it for everything we wanted to talk about in terms of E3. I mean, we've pretty much
We've covered everything
yeah,
well.
we covered everything. So I think the only thing left to do now, I promised some of my viewers here that I was going to give them a little preview of Ultimate Spider-Man. They've been waiting so long for this review to come out, and I have been working on it. Trust me, I have. It's just not done yet, not up to my standards. So I'm going to give you a brief, very brief. I'm going to play at least the first, how long? The first, minute and a half of the review.
Minute and a half. They might as well watch the whole thing.
Oh man, of a like near 30-minute review. I'm assuming it's 30 minutes. I haven't estimated the actual time it's going to take me to.
Christ.
Yeah, so here you guys go. Enjoy. And yeah, I'll shut my mouth now. I just realized that my computer is like not playing the. It's not playing the actual thing because I have my thing set up to something completely different.
So what? They hear the sounds.
Yeah. Well, they don't. No, they don't hear the sounds. It's set up to something different. So it's on my speakers instead of my headset, and because I'm streaming from like what I'm using to get sounds from the computer is on my headset instead of the speakers, it's not registering. So let me try this again, and I'll go mute right after. Let me just test this out.
Ultimate Spider-Man, a game that for many people is either the equal or the superior game to Treyarch's Spider-Man 2. You all want to know where my stance is on this game. Do I think it's better than Spider-Man 2? It's tough to really say where my stance is on this game. Does that mean it's a bad game? Of course not. Just the fact that many people consider this to be in the upper echelon of good Spidey games is a good enough reason for you to go out of your way to buy this. But for me personally, I don't think it's better than Spider-Man 2. Now hold on to your pitchforks. Wait. The two games might just be equal for me. I guess I should explain, but first, let's get on to the game itself. The game itself was released around the cusp of the newly announced upcoming generation in September of 2005. About a full year after Spider-Man 2 was released. That's crazy considering how close it was to Spider-Man 2 and how it seemed like, at least for a little while, that the yearly development cycle for Spider-Man games was going to be prolonged to maybe a 2 or maybe even 3-year development cycle to catch up with the films, which of course would have been 2007 for Spider-Man 3. But in an almost desperate attempt to increase their bottom line and milk what was now a dying generation, Activision called an inaudible. And of course, one of their bigger cash cows, Spider-Man, was in it to win it, so boom. We get Ultimate Spider-Man.
And that's all you guys get. The rest of the video will be on its way shortly. I am working on it, so there you go. There's your audio proof that I have been working on it. I haven't been slacking. I haven't not started it, okay? I have started it. It's a long process because there's so much to record, so much to talk about, so much to do and edit, and what to leave on the cutting room floor. But that's what I have. At least the first 5 minutes of the video are done, so I'm happy about that. But there's still plenty of more work to go, and I have a day off tomorrow, so that's what I'm going to use for it. But there you guys go. There's your little preview. I appreciate those of you who stayed here and have listened to this podcast with me and my cousin. And I think we're all done here. Are we done?
I think we're done.
Well, we're done. All right. You guys have yourselves a good night. Take care, and I'll see you next time. You'll catch your ass down the road.
Thanks for having me. Later.